So we've had two great roundtables. We've got one more today, and that is going to be focused on sport for all. It's probably appropriate. I just mentioned Billie Jean King, and yesterday was the 41st anniversary of the founding of the Women's Sports Foundation. So if we can give Billie and the Women's Sports Foundation a shout out. I know Deborah Larkin is actually going to be in town tomorrow, so I'll see her, and with your permission, I'll convey our congratulations as well. So, council members Caitlin Cahow and Mark Hertling, who flank me here all day and have kept me in line for the most part, are going to lead our next discussion. And I think Ebony, you're going to join us, and Meredith are going to join us at the table as well. And again, they're our team members that support this effort. All right, Caitlin and Mark.
Well, thanks very much, Shelley. And first off, I want to again thank you for all the work that you do and for convening all of us here and giving us the space to talk and really discuss a lot of these super important issues. And we know how hard you work, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm really excited about this particular discussion. I know we all are. Basically, Sports for All, it's exactly what it sounds like. It encompasses it all. It's an initiative that strives to educate all Americans on the variety of benefits associated with sport participation. And that means that the value of sports goes beyond reaching the recommended levels of physical activity, but that participation in sports can support health, social, and personal development throughout life. And that's something that I know all of us here on the council take very seriously and is meaningful to each and every one of us. The Sport for All initiative engages the council and influential leaders across sectors to excite the public around the positive role of sports across the lifespan. The effort focuses on emphasizing a core theme of sport for all, play for life, through one, encouraging people of all ages, genders, ability levels, and backgrounds to participate in sports. Second, uplifting the benefits associated with sport participation. And third, sharing strategies that can help increase the access to sports for youth. Championing the value and benefits of sport participation among the general public can help mitigate the social and cultural barriers that discourage many Americans from participating in sport-based physical activities. Ideally, as awareness of these benefits grows, so too will the participation rates of sport-based activities, creating healthier citizens and calling greater attention to access to sport issues within communities. So a few of the topics that we'd like to further discuss today as they relate to sports are the following. So there are four of them. Reimagining youth sports is one. Two is more than a game, and this is really the value of sports beyond the playing field. And three is girls in sports, which I'm sure there'll be a robust conversation. And lastly, violence in sports. And really, I mean, it's a lot to cover, but we had a really great conversation yesterday, so I think we should be able to hit all of those topics with everyone actively engaged. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mark.
Thanks, Caitlin. And first of all, I want to say that it was great having the other council members that we had with us on this particular panel. It was Caitlin and I were joined by Allison, Felix, and Rob, as well as Dr. Ian Smith, who's not here today, and it was a dynamic discussion. The first thing we're going to talk about, there are going to be four areas, as Caitlin said, and the first one was a category we called reimagining play. The council's been working in partnership with the Aspen Institute's Project Play initiative to identify best practices to make sport a viable option for physical activity. And in January, this past January, Project Play released Sports for All, Play for Life, this pamphlet. If you have not seen this or you don't have this, get it. It's terrific. It's great. It's the very first step in getting activity and sport back in the lives of America. I just want to say that we use that as our guideline. I'm going to summarize the report and what it offers, the 8 strategies that it offers, and then talk about, Meredith rather was very focused on getting us to which one of the 8 strategies is the council going to support. And we came to a conclusion, and we'll make some recommendations on that. But the 8 Project Play strategies include, number 1, ask kids what they want, identifying and incorporating youth-generated ideas on what makes sport fun. Man, didn't we see that this morning with Allison's panel? You know, a couple of folks on that panel all were talking about the love for the game, the love for sport, the love for play, the passion for play. And that's what I think we have to help drive and get back with our youth of America. Secondly, reintroduce free play. Go figure. A strategy which encourages unstructured neighborhood play. And I'm going to give a better definition for that. Unstructured neighborhood play means there's no uniforms, there's no juice boxes, and there's no trophies at the end of every event. It's just having fun and getting back to that. The third one was encouraging sports sampling and avoiding specializing too young and giving youth an opportunity to explore more sport. You know, we've all, I think, been victims in the last several decades of the helicopter parents who really want to start at the earliest age, getting their children prepared for college sport and a professional career when they're 3 years old. That's what we're trying to turn back and really focus on encouraging sports sampling, getting kids involved in all sorts of activity. And boy, wasn't Caleb's comments this morning, who would have thought wheelchair fencing? What a terrific idea for disabled young people, disabled athletes. The fourth strategy was revitalizing in-town leagues. And that's defined by the Aspen Institute as creating more pathways to sports-specific local leagues to supplement school and after-school programs. Number 5, think small. You know, we have a tendency, I think, in America today that as soon as someone comes up with an idea, we make it grandiose and big, and we try and eat the elephant in one bite as opposed to taking one bite at a time. And I think one of the strategies which the Aspen Institute suggests is thinking smaller for the neighborhoods to really get more fundamentals and more success at the local organization. Number 6, design for development. That's adopting coaching and training practices that are best fit for the developmental needs of youth. And that the example that the project play uses the American developmental model. But coincidentally, my wife recently gave me a book for an early Father's Day present, and I read it last week, and I have to admit, there's a bias here, as Dr. McD knows. I'm originally from St. Louis, and I'm a huge St. Louis Cardinal fan. But this book, called the Matheny Manifesto, is reaching the bestseller list right now, and it's Mike Matheny, who's the skipper of the St. Louis Cardinals, approach to how to teach and play with kids at the local level. And it's bringing back things which I think Caitlin's going to talk about shortly, values and growth and leadership opportunities for young people. Number 7 on the strategy list was to train all coaches, ensuring coaches are equipped with the skills to assist youth in skill development and mentoring of personal development. We touched a little bit on that, and Anthony mentioned that, and Jane did as well in terms of our disabled athletes, of how do you train coaches to not only do great with disabled athletes, but how do we train coach to be better developers of our youth? That's strategy number 7. And then strategy number 8 was to emphasize prevention. We'll talk more about that with injuries in sports in a couple of specific areas, but we're seeing more and more as we've gone away from physical education in schools, the unfortunate potential of having more injuries as people start getting involved in play as opposed to less. So we have to ensure that our coaches and our parents understand that dynamic. I'll just summarize in a minute because we look for a couple of things to really drive home. And one of the ideas we had as a group was perhaps a game challenge for America. And we're going to use our already established partners, you know, and others, you know, not only the Let's Move Active School campaign, but those who are involved with youth sport like the YMCA or some of the other organizations that are part of helping youth grow up, and design a challenge over the next year as we head toward the 60th anniversary of the President's Council. And that challenge consists of redefining play in sport and in games. And one of the ideas we had was we throw out ideas of this contest where organizations throughout the country would come back at the end of the year with ideas for new games using the bedrock foundation for old games. And the example we used was 3-ball or 5-ball soccer, where instead of playing soccer with a lot of rules and a certain number of people on each side and referees and all kinds of things like that, there's a sport that we sometimes use in the military called 5-ball soccer, where you can have literally 100 people on both sides if the field's big enough. You put 5 balls in the middle, somebody blows a whistle, and the first person to get 3 balls in the other person's goal wins. So you have balls flying all over the place, people are laughing, coming at you from different angles, running around. We're going to use that as an example and perhaps look for other sports that we could adapt that way, where there would be more fun while we're playing. We'll put a couple of rules. Some of the suggestions we talked about yesterday was the rules, it has to be 30 minutes of continuous play. There's no limit to how many people you can have on each side. It's got to be a variant of some kind of sport that we're already known. There's no referees or coaches involved. There may be some supervision. But we're going to ask, and this could be part of the Gimme 5 campaign as well, for different organizations to give us 5 recommendations for sports. And then at the end of the year, the council or maybe ESPN, during an event that we proposed, might be able to choose the best sports or the best teams or the people with the best recommendations. More to follow on that one. I think I'm going to finish there and turn it back to you, Caitlin.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I mean, I think I was really inspired by what Anna was talking about when she was on stage for the youth panel, and that's really that, you know, sports should be about fun. That's the whole bedrock principle, and I think that in our discussion is what we really wanted to uplift and really send out that message and really use that as a calling card, because that's why we all got involved in sports to begin with. So when you hear Anna talk about, you know, dancing or doing different things, she's thinking of that as a sport, and she's really thinking outside the box, and I think that's so great. When you give kids the opportunity to be creative, they're going to be creative, and I think we can really harness that and use that to offer new opportunities and ideas to youth and not so youth all across the country. I think it could be a very positive experience for all of us. And sort of, you know, moving on from that, I don't know if we want to separate up into categories as much, but if there are sort of comments about that, or we can, the other categories kind of blend pretty well, so we can, I don't know, Meredith, you had notes on this, so I don't know if you felt.
Yeah, well, I would just chime in as well about, you know, as we know that kids drop off at the age of 12, and one of the leading reasons for that is sports aren't fun anymore. And I think that's really what we came to conclusions about yesterday, is that we want to, as you said before, harness that, the fun, and bring fun back into sports and allow creativity and innovation to also play a role in that. I think the structured play, as Mark was going through the strategies, a lot of what we've seen with youth sports has become very structured, which certainly has many benefits, but providing the unstructured nature to allow for that creativity, same that we see in arts programs and other strategies for kids, I think that will allow them to grow not only as athletes, but as individuals, and harnessing that creativity.
I applaud Mark and Caitlin's leadership on this. I think it was a great discussion, and you know, it really strikes a chord to me in 2 ways, both the positive and so much of the positive that we've all seen around sports. And I really would underscore and like to see as a next step the working with existing partners out there who train coaches and also provide insight and guidance to parents. Someone said to me recently, sports are great if you keep the parents out of it. Obviously that's an overstatement, but we've all seen it, and we've all seen how the over-professionalization of youth sports that's talked about in the report, the travel teams that are cutting kids when they're 10 years old, the professional trainers coming in. It also talks about, which is a theme here, looking at it from a kid's perspective. They did some extensive research, and they said, what do you love about sports, and what don't you love? And what they love is having fun and being with their friends and learning a skill. And what they don't love are the weekend tournaments and the professional training and the cutting and what have you. And the idea that sports can be competitive, but also a terrific positive experience, teaching values and discipline and perseverance through challenges can be something I think we should aspire to. And I'd love to see something like that come out of this.
I think, too, that as Shelley mentioned before, the potential of getting a youth advisory group, I can't remember what you called it, but a youth advisory group on some of these opportunities is critically important. Because as Rob just said, and he basically quoted what's in the Matheny book, because the first line of the manifesto says the thing that's really messing up youth sports are parents. The parents are demanding too much, and we've got to get back to play. So I think if we can give this opportunity for youth to help us design these opportunities, it will go viral because they can use some of the social media tools that us old folks are digital aliens with, and they can spread the word a lot more, and I think it'll be a whole lot more fun, too.
I think there's also a really great opportunity. Mark mentioned the American Development Model. That's something that sort of came out of USA Hockey and their work with the Aspen Institute. And I think what's really great about that is we talk a lot about using our partnerships, and there are some great examples right there. And I would be interested to know how maybe other NGBs, like a USA Hockey, are, if you have information about track and field or skating, or if there are sort of initiatives going on that we could create a dialogue around, that this could transcend across sports, so that while we still are emphasizing the fun and the not organized sports, that we're continuing this initiative of fun and creativity and enjoyment and participation across all organized sports too.
Sorry. Well, I know that the NBA is getting ready. This might be a premature announcement, but I know that they're getting ready to launch a new youth league affiliation or association. So I would love to work with the President's Council and obviously the NBA to try to see if we can partner together with regards to how that new league is being formed.
I was just going to say, we talk about that we know at age 12 that kids seem to fall off, and they say they fall off mostly because it's not fun, which is very vague. You know, what does that really mean? And I think one of the things it does mean is that we have to find a way to eliminate the judgment. You know, that's what's not fun, to be judged whether you're good enough. And that happens from kids as well as adults. So it's not just parents, but it's how we look at, you know, if we want to define it as play should not be about being good enough. And that's why people, you know, we all play. Everybody here who has gone into one particular sport, you went to that particular sport because that's what you were the best at. And so it didn't. And so what happens when people can't find their place, then they stop participating at all. So that's the one thing that we have to remember. It comes from kids and it comes from adults. It's the whole judging. It's the whole competition of who can be the best at this, who can be the best at that. And that's what we really, really have to look at in terms of when you're talking about playing, we're talking about having fun. So we have to be careful in that respect in regards to that.
I want to add that we're starting to talk about the negative aspects of sport and sport participation, but there's a positive upswing because sports does incredible things for young kids. And there's lots of organizations, National Youth Sport Organization, youth soccer leagues, that have put out some really good materials. But one of the things that we saw when we were working on the Institute of Medicine report, Educating the Student Body, is that a lot of students, youth, eliminate themselves from sport because of the pay to play. And there's got to be a way that we can, not only in school leagues where it can put parents up to between $1,000 and $6,000, depending on the sport, if they have to buy the equipment to play, but also the Parks and Recs leagues, where the cost to participate in park leagues in your own community have outsourced kids because their parents can't afford to play. So it leads them into doing other things than participating in sport. So the benefits of sport participation outweigh the negative barriers, but we need to find a way to upswing that.
Yeah, there's another piece in the book on Sports for All, the Aspen Project booklet, that actually lists, and it's a fascinating approach, it lists different sports and what are more popular in various economic demographics. And it was fascinating to me. I mean, it's a blinding flash of the obvious, but it's still another one of those things that eliminates young people from playing. And I think, again, you know, it's good to get to the point where you're terrific, but you got to learn how to play first and generate a love for the game.
Well, I was going to. It seems like this is not a new observation, but that there's an arms race that has been going on, and I think that we have a role, particularly the professional and Olympic athletes, but all of us to lend our voice to saying there's a better way to do this. And it's not just for providing access to every kid with, you know, financial issues, disability, people who may not be so good, but even for the kids that show promise. Just a word on what Caitlin said about her favorite Olympic sport. The hockey group has done terrific work on this, showing that the best athletes and the best training are cross-training and playing different sports when they're young. And the other thing that I loved what hockey's doing is they are now not allowing their programs to play 12 months out of the year. They're recommending and suggesting, because it's actually a better way to become a good athlete, to not play 12 months of the year, let alone the overuse, injury, and all of that occurs. So,
I think that's actually. Oh, Dr. McD, did you have something to add? Well, I think it's actually a great point that you make, and what I also like about the ADM model and what's emphasized in Project Play is educating, engaging parents and coaches, and that kind of segues perfectly, unless you had a point on a similar subject. Quickly.
Okay.
I'm just kidding. You take all the time you want.
There's an emerging science on how to make sports fun. I mean, I think the information is there, is how to make sports fun. I think what we need to do is take that information and to get out and train coaches and school people about how to do it right. The other point is the cross-training makes better athletes. That is an emerging science as well. So I think one of the deliverables potentially would be that the President's Council would reach out to a organization we don't have a relationship with, or a current one, on how to make sports fun and to help convey the information that's already out there into a meeting of coaches or parent-teachers association organization, that we can amplify what's already been researched, disseminate it so at least the coaches can do a better job of making sports fun for the kids, the parent volunteers, because this is a huge, as we know, in the community levels with little leagues and all sorts of leagues. There's a lot of parents who don't know squat about coaching and get involved in coaching, and I was one of those parents over the years with the YMCA, and I did, you know, went in there and I didn't know what I was doing. So we can potentially help that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right on target, and it is a community effort, and I think that's so important. And one of the reasons it's so important is because, and here I'll transition sort of the second prong of this, is that really sports, it's more than a game. And that's sort of the second header, and we've all been sort of touching on this throughout the day, and it's that sports just aren't about the outcomes of a particular game or a season. It's really about what you take with you over the rest of your life, the values that you learn, the lessons that you learn. And that's something that we talked about in our group quite a bit, and I'd be interested to sort of hear council members, you know, personal thoughts, personal stories, but also how we think we can effectively create sort of something tangible that we can provide through the council with that in mind.
I think it's when you look at an Olympian or you look at an Olympic figure skater, they're out there all alone, and you think, wow, they have such drive, such ambition, so and they're so competitive. And over the years, I don't think it was competing against somebody. It was being the best that you can be. And I think as President's Council members, we need to emphasize that. It's not so much the focus on winning and being the best. It's being the best you can be, and always raising that bar higher and higher so then you can leap over it.
For me, sports has always been about overcoming adversity or challenges that you'll have. The biggest challenges for me were, injuries are a part of sports. It's going to naturally happen. When those do happen, that you look at it as an opportunity to make yourself a better athlete when you do come back. I dislocated my wrist and my shooting hand when I was in college, and this was a career-threatening injury. But because I worked so hard, I actually became a better shooter after my injury than I was before. And I didn't do that alone. I had a great support system, my family, my coaches, my parents, that were there in my corner, keeping me mentally strong. Talking to kids about facing challenges and how that can relate to you, not just in sports, but then later in life, and not backing down from a challenge, but accepting it and overcoming it.
There are two things from my background, and Jason, I'd like to reinforce that. Above the gymnasium at West Point, where I went to school, there's a quote from a Douglas MacArthur speech that says, "Upon the fields of friendly strife are sown the seeds that upon other fields on other days will bear the fruits of victory." Now, he was talking specifically about how sport applies to the eventual mission of our nation's military to secure and win our nation's wars. Then, if you're a West Point football player, and they haven't received a whole lot of attention lately, except the bad kind, for not winning a lot of games, when they leave the locker room to go onto the field, they each touch a plaque that was a quote from some general during World War II that said, "I need an officer for a secret and dangerous mission. I need a West Point football player." The point being that the kinds of things that you're talking about, leadership, the inculcation of values, the personal growth, all contribute to you being a better person and achieving what Michelle just said, being the best you can be in whatever circumstances you're placed into. And I know it significantly affected me in my career, my last career, and that's what I think sport does for people.
So I would like to pose the question to the council. What do you think are some specific approaches that we could take to uplift those values and uplift them to different audiences, to our youth, to our coaches, to adults, to parents? But how can we put those values at the forefront?
Well, I know there was a suggestion in our room yesterday talking about the power of a personal story or a personal message, sharing stories of athletes or, educators, and really anyone who wants to step up to the plate and share their story in a way that really uplifts those lessons and those ideas. And Meredith actually was talking about a blog idea was brought up, just ways that we can share individual stories. You might have better...
No, I think if we look around the table, each of you will have a unique story, and whether it's the personal growth and overcoming adversity and challenges, whether it's injuries or how it shaped you as a leader, all of these stories resonate, and they likely resonate with different audiences. Yesterday, Caitlin brought up a great point that what's going to motivate a 12-year-old girl is going to be very different than a 12-year-old boy. And how we approach those, it's really important to look at, and I think all of our stories collectively can really hit on a variety of different audiences that we can strategically work together to share those stories in a meaningful way. And working through social media in innovative ways, we can really share your leadership stories, how you grew personally, and how you can help others overcome that and inspire those kids like they were the ones up on stage.
If I can say, because all of us do have stories, and we're on the far side of performance, but I think Carly's presentation, I'm going to go back to her. Man, that was inspirational. So I think as we also reach out to young people, this blog should not only be just us, but maybe we take random samplings across the nation of people who have inspirational events occurring in their life and model them after Carly.
And just to segue too, I mean, we've not talked a lot about it today, but Deb mentioned it earlier. Next year, 2016, is our 60th anniversary. Obviously, we talked some about that yesterday and got some ideas on the table. When we think about, and Rob, thankfully, is chairing that committee. And Rob, I keep looking over to you because I want to see your brain working on all of this. I see him kind of assimilating all of this. He's our marketing and branding guru. No pressure, though. But, you know, and I think about what we could, some of the messaging that could come out of it, and I know, you know, focus is important, but gosh, there's just so much rich material, if you will, right within our council, as well as that we have access to around the country. So as we think about 60th anniversary and where we want to go this next, you know, the 18 months that we have left, really, as part of this administration, that's certainly can be part of that.
We're talking about what can we do to, you know, find ways to motivate youth and people to keep them active. You know, I think a couple of things. I mean, we talk about sport and play and things of that nature. Yesterday, we all saw a wonderful example of one of the ways it's done. You know, to just watch kids play. I mean, there was no real competition, no real judgment, no real focus, and they had fun. I mean, and so you know, what we did yesterday with the kids at the Y, and so that's kind of a basis for that. But I just think in terms of what we all get from sports, or what we all have gotten from sports, and how do we find a way to transfer that to the nation, I think it has to be small increments. You know, we have to find small successes, and, you know, it's like showing up is winning. You know, I mean, once you begin, you've already won, kind of a thing. And it's like, because we don't want people, I mean, we're not saying that, you know, if you participate in the sport, you're going to be an Olympian. But it's like we all know that the first time somebody does their first push-up, their first pull-up, walk their first mile, those are their successes. And so, like you said, having the kids talk about going from A to B, those are the things that makes them feel like champions. And so we want to kind of, you know, I think it's, you know, to sell those small successes, and that's what keeps you in the game. Because it's really about sticking to it. You know, it's really about continuing it. You know, one of the things that, you know, that I believe in teaching my children, or my parents taught me, just don't quit. You know, it's like just show up, you know, kind of a thing. But just small ways, I think, in terms of, you know, creating champions.
One of the things Shelley and I were just having a sidebar on was, you know, how do we name this campaign? And you know, the suggestion might be, I came to play. And it's a whole lot different than what we've done in the past, where when you came to play, you're all rucked up, you got your pads and, you know, everything, and you already got the uniform. I came to play just to have fun, you know.
Coach, put me in.
Yeah.
So Cornell and I were on the red squad. We did the 1, 2, 3 red squad. But you could tell the kids were having so much fun. And before the instructions and what are we doing with this hacky sack? What are we going to do? They started to make up their own game. And I think it's to the point of Hannah who's still here. She said very simply, maybe you can make up more games. And she even said, which is the next, not to jump ahead, but girls in sports. And that is very powerful, because I see my nieces, they're 10 and 12. The 10-year-old has no interest to play in a structured sport, nothing. She doesn't want to be judged, but she loves to dance. And so my sister has been very creative in the sense that she can choreograph programs and do some exhibitions. And then I have my 12-year-old who's so opposite. And my sister says she's so much like you. And I'm like, oh no! She's like, she wants to go to the Olympics. This is her whole dream. And she's a hardcore gymnast, and hopefully she'll make it to her dreams, you know, to the Olympic Games. But that's the thing. We need to look at and we need to listen to people like Hannah, the children, the youth that are really impacted by the decisions that we make.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and I'm glad you made the segue for me. But There's something so important, and we all know this, fundamentally important about participating in sports. And one of the big issues that we confront every day on the council is access for everyone, and I mean everyone across the board. And one area of issues with access that we discussed yesterday was for girls in sport. And we discussed how even though Title IX passed in 1972, girls' participation rates are still 2 to 5% lower than boys across the board. And that's something that we've really focused on, and we understand that we need to better understand the barriers and the benefits that exist for girls when they participate in sports at all levels. And they're actually, just to kind of get us going, I'd love to cue up a video that some or all of you may be familiar with. So if we could roll the videotape.
Hi, Erin.
Hi.
Okay, so I'm going to just give you some actions to do. I just do the first thing that comes to mind. Show me what it looks like to run like a girl.
My hair. Oh, God.
Show me what it looks like to fight like a girl. Now throw like a girl.
Aw. My name is Dakota, and I'm 10 years old.
Show me what it looks like to run like a girl. Throw like a girl. Fight like a girl. What does it mean to you when I say run like a girl?
It means run fast as you can.
So do you think you just insulted your sister?
No. I mean, yeah, insulted girls, but not my sister.
Is like a girl a good thing?
Actually, don't know if it's a bad thing or a good thing. It sounds like a bad thing. It sounds like you're trying to humiliate someone.
So when they're in that vulnerable time between 10 and 12, how do you think it affects them when somebody uses like a girl as an insult?
I think it definitely drops their self-confidence and really puts them down, because during that time they're already trying to figure themselves out, and when somebody says you hit like a girl, it's like, well, what does that mean? Because they think they're a strong person. It's kind of like telling them that they're weak and they're not as good as them.
And what advice do you have to young girls who are told they run like a girl, kick like a girl, hit like a girl, swing like a girl?
Keep doing it, because it's working. If somebody else says that running like a girl or kicking like a girl or shooting like a girl is something that you shouldn't be doing, that's their problem. Because if you're still scoring and you're still getting to the ball on time and you're still being first, you're doing it right. Doesn't matter what they say. I mean, yes, I kick like a girl and I swim like a girl and I walk like a girl and I wake up in the morning like a girl because I am a girl. And that is not something that I should be ashamed of. So I'm going to do it anyway. That's what they should do.
If I asked you to run like a girl now, would you do it differently?
I would run like myself.
Would you like a chance to redo it?
Yeah.
Why can't run like a girl also mean win the race?
I mean, it's kind of hard to argue with how powerful that kind of messaging is. And, Carly, thank you to you too, because that's exactly what, your clip looked like to me up there. I was really inspired hearing your story. And as someone who's been proud to skate like a girl since 1987, you just keep rocking on because you're doing great, and just keep up. But I mean, I think we can all see that this is a really impactful type of messaging, and something that I think we can, look at and really kind of, I don't know if a partnership is maybe in the future, Shelley, but any kind of branding that can really inspire and uplift and transcend and carry along the messages that we've been talking about today, I think is an incredibly positive thing. Yeah.
As a grandmother, I have been very supportive of my granddaughter. And at first she was into like soccer and dancing, and it changes because I think it's a part of exposing them to as many activities as possible. And now she enjoys cheerleading and volleyball, but most importantly, she recently took an interest in golf. So what's really neat about that is now I get to take my granddaughter and we both get to share something that I love, but now she is enjoying as well. So it goes back to the senior and the young kid being able to enjoy activities together.
I wanted to add that I came through a time where I was a high school athlete, went to college on scholarship for athletics, and then when graduated became a high school coach and coached a team that won the state basketball championship in Massachusetts and coached a team in Miami that did not win a single game in a season. And treating the girls the same exact way, you know, made some mistakes along the line. I look back and know it now because I probably coached the way I was coached, and a lot of screaming, kicking, throwing things across the court, and to do things differently. But what I want to put on the table now is I'm very happy that Title IX holds school districts accountable for the number of girls participating in sport. And we recently had an opportunity through the NFL, Gen Youth Foundation, to receive flag football equipment and training for our middle school coaches. And this year we added middle school girls flag football, not powder puff football, flag football. And we added 600 more girls playing sports to the pool in a matter of 4 months. So it can be done when opportunity is made available. It just needs to be made available. So, you know, anything that we can do working with all the NGBs and supporting, you know, more girls in sports and even non-traditional sports. Field hockey has grants, equipment grants on the table for any school district and schools that want to use this. And, you know, even places like Miami where we do have ice rinks, you know, why not bring ice hockey, you know, and figure skating into the schools and sports that we don't necessarily play in the schools. It's time to say, let's expand the options instead of the traditional sports.
Thanks, Jane. And just to jump in real quick on, I think we mentioned this last year or in September at the meeting, but there's a movement around physical literacy that has really started in Canada and other European countries and is just making its way here to the U.S. And physical literacy has a great sisterhood, if you will, with the American Development Model. That's all part of it. It's about just the sport sampling and you know the three keys to physical literacy, to creating young people who grow into active adults are three things: instilling the ability, the confidence, and the desire. Ability, confidence, desire. And the ability part is learning, you know, the motor skills and being out there and you know, feeling like you have the ability to swing a bat or throw a ball, et cetera. We need that, and that's why we need qualified physical educators and youth sport programmers and coaches, et cetera. And the confidence, and again, that's part of how do we train our coaches? How are they in turn instilling that confidence in the kids? And don't get me started on the parents. And then the desire. And again, that's part of it. If I feel confident and I have some abilities, I'm going to feel confident that I can go on and I don't have to be the best. I can just be better than I was yesterday. So ability, confidence, and desire. That really, you know, that really helped me kind of understand. Yeah, that's what we're trying to do. It's that's what it turns out to be, and that's what physical literacy is all about.
Well, one of the ideas that we sort of had in our room yesterday was to put together a work group focused on girls and women in sport. If anyone is interested or would like to volunteer, I know some who aren't here might be interested as well. Just, you know, getting together and trying to build off of this momentum. And actually, we're going to have some help because the council's been working with the Office of Women's Health, and they're going to be releasing a literature review later this year. So there's going to be a lot of really new, great information coming out. Yeah, Dr. McDee.
At least to a point I wanted to bring up is that last year or the year before, when Bill was here from the Science Board, we asked about what are some of the gaps in there with research, and one was adolescent girls and exercise. So that the science base is not there where it is for like what makes sports fun. So I think one of the actionables could be, our deliverables would be that our council would advise either NIH or CDC. They don't like particularly getting advice on how to do research and stuff or what they should be doing, but I don't care. And that is something that we've, through our science board, recognize there's a gap in research, and we should formally communicate that to the appropriate federal agency, that this is something that we are aware of and that they should be aware of as well.
Well, unless there are any other comments on the girls and women's portion, I'm going to turn it over to Rob.
Well, Jane, you had talked about how positive sports are, and we were talking a little bit about negatives. The last section is violence and abuse in sports, obviously a negative subject. And I think the perspective is not to avert our eyes from this, obviously, and to be right up there with folks who are telling the truth about what can occur and what has occurred in sports, with all the positives that we've all seen anecdotally and we've all learned about and that we need to foster. There are a range of negatives that can be on the, on one end of the spectrum to rape and sexual abuse by coaches and others in a sports environment, to negative culture is what I would call it. And we were joined by an official from the U.S. Olympic Committee, has a U.S. Center for Safe Sport. And they, among many others I've learned, Ebony particularly has done some terrific research on a lot of other nonprofits out there who have done a lot of very good work on this particular subject. And as we have seen the White House and many others now respond to a lot of things that have been in the news, and prior to issues being in the news, from the University of Virginia controversy to other incidents with professional college and even high school teams, it's something that we felt that we needed to address and that we could lend our voice to it. One thing particularly that I've been interested in talking about, identifying issues where they are and to be honest about it, is the insight that, particularly in boys' organized sports, there can be a negative culture that exists, that leads to bullying, that leads to misogyny, that leads to a whole other host of other things. And while it could occur on girls' teams, I think we all know, anecdotally, I was a college athlete, I saw it, and I now see it as a parent. And I see it on high school teams, and I see it on younger than high school teams. And I think that this is, as we talked a lot about, lending our voice to issues and to take advantage of the extraordinary honor we have of representing sport and the positive things that sport can be in the United States. I think that we felt it was something that we needed to step up into and identify, and I think specifically help coaches, help parents at all levels, and I mean even including at the college level, even at some of the elite colleges, to include this type of sensitivity and training and positive reinforcement of positive values and positive messages to, not exclusively, but in many ways, primarily men's teams and boys' teams and even younger boys' teams, because it's out there and there's no sense us putting our head in the sand about it. And I also think that as role models, and I've talked to folks who, particularly agents who represent professional sports, male sports athletes, of having them reach back to the colleges, to the high schools, and telling their little brothers, so to speak, that this is not cool. This is not how it should be. So we had a very good conversation about that, but that's the fourth element that we were addressing.
Yeah, I mean, it's a shame we don't have our representative from the USOC here today, because I think she really illuminated some of the great work that's going on over there. So certainly, certainly a great resource to consider and something that can be helpful to us, I think, moving forward. Yeah.
For our council members that weren't able to take part in the sports breakout session, the U.S. Center for Safe Sport will be, the role of it is to use sports as a platform for change and allow sports to be a mechanism to prevent violence and abuse. And that's the violence and abuse that athletes may suffer from themselves, as well as being the perpetrator of violence and abuse. So there will be resources available through those that USOC serves and organizations under them, as well as places to go if you're a victim, and just those options and that information to attack it or address it from multiple angles. So there is the opportunity for you all as a council to decide the role that you want to play in violence and in sports, and if working with the U.S. Committee on Safe Sport is one of those things that you want to uplift.
To comment, I think one of the things that scares young athletes that are engaged in those situations is they're afraid if they come forward, they'll be cut from teams. So how does the athlete who's victimized get protected from not being cut from a team for coming forward to reporting an activity from another player or a coach in particular? And that's always been something that's been questioned.
I think that falls under the umbrella of the resources that the Safe Sport Center wants to provide for athletes, because it's not just about preventing the violence and the abuse, but if it's happening to you, how do you deal with it, and being that source that gives them that direction.
The thing that that I learned is, I alluded to this before, is the many organizations that are out there that exist, as we know and we learn in almost any facet we've talked about today. And some of them address that, but the point is really to add our voice, particularly at a moment in our society when this has been in the news and in headlines over the last year or two or so. It's not a new issue, but it has certainly spiked. And but I think that for me, a next step is to, and we talked about this, use our convening power to bring some of these groups together and have a discussion about this with Safe Sport, but with with others, and identify what we could do, but also to catalyze a more coherent effort around this.
Sorry. Well, no, I think, and I completely agree with that. And I think what was great about our discussion yesterday was that everyone in the room was very positive and hopeful that we can use sport for something that's a really great force for change and a very positive influence on the ways in which we interact. So I thought it was a really positive, great discussion yesterday, and had some really great takeaways as far as next steps and moving forward and using the resources that are out there.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that a lot of my friends now from the LGBT community, when I talk to them about sports, the main reason why they quit is because of being bullied. So if we're talking about trying to really bring everyone into the tent to play sports, we do have to address bullying, and there are some great organizations in the LGBT community maybe we can reach out to help partner with because they have a lot of experience.
Definitely. So thank you. And so Ebony and Meredith, can you recap, please? One of you, we obviously had a lot of discussion here.
We'll tag team this because there are quite a few, so if I miss some, and Ebony chime in as well. So I think the first point is really uplifting fun, and we talked about a few strategies around how we can uplift that as it relates to getting kids and keeping kids in the game. That includes looking at the game challenge and how we might be able to launch a challenge that's really innovating around sports. And that also includes getting the youth perspective in there at the onset as well to get kids involved with setting that and also being a part of the challenge and looking at strategies to do that. We talked about the American development model and looking at what's going on in the different NGBs and how we might be able to continue our work together and learn from shared experiences. We talked about also looking at kids and talking to kids about what it does mean to be fun, how we can continue to eliminate judgment and really capitalize on what's fun for them in sports. Dr. McDonough made up a great point about looking at the science behind what's making sports fun and finding out more information about that and potentially working with those organizations that have skin in the game with that research. So we'll do some homework on that. And then we talked about from looking at the more than a game aspect, talking about sharing stories, not only from the council members around the table and those that aren't here, but also looking at youth perspectives. And as Carly and the other great youth champions that we had here are just small examples of the success that we can see from kids. Also looking at elevating the small steps in that equation as well. We talked about convening a girls and women's group, which will help us in our effort to elevate the importance of girls and women in sports. And also looking through our literature review, we'll also be able to look at the gaps in the research and make an analysis and how we can continue to inform around the research community. Ebony, do you have others, I'm sure?
I would just add on exploring adding a youth advisory group to aid in the discussion of what we're doing when it comes to reimagining youth sports, and also connecting with the new program that the NBA will be launching around youth sports and new opportunities for kids to get engaged around the game of basketball. And I would also add the idea of almost memoirs of play, where it would discuss what are the personal stories of anyone that's been involved in sports. We have athletes on our council. We also have professionals that serve on other backgrounds that still have a connection and a relationship to sports. And then lastly, I would add when it comes to violence in sports, looking at the partners that we can engage that play a role in how sports is shaped and formed for our youth, especially when it comes to coaching, when it comes to their safety, when it comes to just how they overall develop and enjoy the game, and bringing those potential players to the conversation or together in a conversation to see what can come of it and what strategies might be implemented in already existing programs to increase the ability of youth to engage in safe sport.
How's that sound? That keep us busy for a while?
Yeah. Simple stuff.
All right. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think it'd be helpful for us to, on an ongoing basis, be involved in coach training or education, and in the same process of trying to disseminate information about how to make sports fun with coaching community, we can also disseminate information about how boys should treat girls, and that could be done at the same time. And either we could sponsor a lecturer at a very important annual meeting, or that the council would be the council speaker. We could have request an article be published in their what they read on a monthly basis or a quarterly newspaper. There's some, I think we should be involved in the sport, actively involved in building up and supporting and providing training for our coaches.
Thank you, Dr. McD, and I'm looking at Paul Rodert again. I know he's taking copious notes, but, well, and there are other certainly a lot of other folks in this space that we work with, but we'll definitely follow up. I know Paul's very involved in the upcoming coaching conference. That's why I'm continue to look at him, but we'll figure out ways that we can lift this up during, not only during that conference, but with all of the organizations that are represented there. There's a lot of organizations that do coaching, including all of the national governing bodies, et cetera. So we will definitely do that. And Risa, make sure I have this right, but the best way, I know all you guys have this, but anyone out there that wants the Sport for All, Play for Life report, best place is projectplay.us. Yes, projectplay.us is where you can get this. It's great, and it's an awesome website that allows you to download it.